representation within the media, whether it's mainstream media, whether it's social media. And of course that does help color the incorrect perception that develops about Islam, and does unfortunately impact Islamophobia. So there is a role for media to play in contextualizing for their audience the difference between what the vast majority of Muslims practice and preach and what fringe elements are trying to do. I'm sure no country, no religion would like to be identified by such fringe elements. Here in the United States, they wouldn't like to be identified by the fringe and extreme elements that may exist, and no country or no religion would like to be associated with those fringe elements, and it's just as true for the Muslim world and for Islam. So there is an important role that media can play in that context. I think we've covered all the questions that I've noted down.
Sir, with regard to the conference on women in Islam, is the message that came out of the conference for equal rights for women, will it have any impact on the Taliban in Afghanistan?
An interesting question. As far as the conference on women in Islam is concerned, I think it is it sends a strong message globally. Domestically and internally within the Muslim world, it's extremely strong messaging, powerful messaging, but also globally, internationally, and across borders. That what is the true history of Islam as a religion that before many other religions, granted rights to women such as the right to inheritance, the right to own property, the right to divorce. Many such rights were granted to women first and foremost by Islam at a time when Christianity and other religions deprived women of these rights. There has absolutely been women across the world who struggled for their place within their societies and within the Muslim world. We've seen Shaheed Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto in Pakistan, elected to the highest office of the land, not once, not twice, but potentially thrice had she not been assassinated. We've seen in Turkey that they've elected a Muslim head of government. There's a female Muslim head of government. There's a female head of government in Bangladesh. There's the Singapore's president is a Muslim woman, so the accomplishment of Muslim women across the world is there for us to see. Within the Middle East, you see the transformation taking place in Saudi Arabia, where women gaining space day to day under the leadership of Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. I spent a large part of my youth in the United Arab Emirates, and as I mentioned, their parliament is also 50-50, and everywhere, whether it is the media, whether it is the social space, the entrepreneurial space, and indeed the political space, women are making their mark. So it is through our actions that we will demonstrate the role of women within Islam. As far as the impact that this will have on the Taliban, I can't speak to them. But what it does demonstrate that their actions are an outlier and not the norm within the Muslim world. And that there's no other country on the planet, Muslim or otherwise, that condones depriving women and girls from the right to education. And particularly on behalf of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, when then this message goes that it is Islam that grants these rights, that women's rights are Islamic rights and Islamic rights enshrine women's rights, then there is no space for groups such as those in Afghanistan or anywhere else to claim that Islam justifies their actions.
A follow-up on Afghanistan, please.
Sure.
Is Pakistan playing a role or ready to play a role to make the Taliban revert these decisions against women?
So Pakistan has consistently, ever since the fall of Kabul engaged with the interim government, positively engaged with the interim government in Afghanistan. First and foremost, because we also believe that they should live up to their commitments to the international community, to their own people, but it is also in Pakistan's interest that there is a peaceful, prosperous, stable, secure Afghanistan at home, at peace with itself and with its neighbors. And it is in our interest that the interim government in Afghanistan are able to deliver on their commitments to their people and to the international community, because if they fail to do so, of course, they will, the first and foremost victims or consequences of that failure will be the people of Afghanistan, but the second victims of such a failure will be the people of Pakistan. For example, they fail to live up to their commitment to ensure that their soil is not to be used for terrorism. Of course, the first and foremost victim of that would be the people of Afghanistan, but secondary, the victim of that are the people of Pakistan, who have seen an increase of terrorist attacks since the fall of Kabul. There's a sort of famous saying that if Kabul sneezes, then Pakistan catches a cold. And if this precedent is allowed to be set within Afghanistan, I'm sure there'll be fringe and extremist groups, both in my country and other countries, that will try to perpetuate this sexism and deprive women of their rights in education. We also believe that these steps that have been taken by the interim government, where they're not living up to their promises, and we've spoken clearly with them on this, that it doesn't help us help them. It puts us in a very difficult situation to advocate for some of the things that the people of Afghanistan need in the form of humanitarian aid, the unfreezing of their funds, the functioning of their economy, etc., etc. Puts us in a very difficult position in where we are trying to advocate for those things, but then they are not living up to their commitments in the context of women's education.
We are ready. You can ask. Yep.
Thank you, Your Excellency, because my question didn't get answered. That's fine. The role of, and because I write for a Catholic newspaper, the role of other churches, but specifically Pope Francis, who has made overtures, has been to several Muslim countries, most recently Iraq, and created dialogue between the Vatican and different. You know, what can you say about the Catholic Church's overtures to Islam and how that's helped?
So I think that, first of all, I'd like to welcome and praise the efforts of His Holiness Pope Francis, particularly to do with interfaith harmony. And I absolutely agree that there's a role for all of us to play to encourage interfaith harmony between religions. And rather than sort of just speaking in our own echo chambers, if members of different religions and religious groups come together, I think they'll find that there's far more that we agree upon than as to what we disagree upon. Someone with the prominence of the Pope himself, I think, can play quite a significant role in this context.
Thank you again. There is some pressure on Indonesia to normalize with Israel. I'm scared that if these efforts give fruit, we will see a domino effect on Muslim countries. Would you envision anytime soon that Pakistan would ever normalize with Israel before Palestinians achieve their rights?
So as far as what you refer to about Indonesia, I'm honestly not aware and therefore not in a place to comment. As far as Pakistan is concerned, I can imagine a time when Pakistan would be able to recognize Israel, but it would not be possible without first the people of Palestine making that decision. Our country is clear, our people are clear, our history is clear. We pride ourselves that our passport never recognized an apartheid state. And at a time when South Africa were one of those countries, our passports used to say that our passports are valid for all countries except South Africa and Israel. Today there is one apartheid state left in the world, and Pakistan does not recognize it.
One more question.
Real quick, UNHCR is also very critical to the human rights situation in Pakistan. Could you comment a little bit on it?
UNHCR has a very important role to play across the world. And while Pakistan relies on the UNHCR's reports in the context of, for example, Kashmir, then we'll absolutely have to be willing, tolerant of any and all criticism that they may have of Pakistan's record on human rights. I can't stand here before you and say that Pakistan has an outstanding record on human rights, but I can say that there are political parties, civil society, people across the length and breadth of Pakistan that have throughout our history struggled for and achieved quite significant progress on the issue of human rights, but there's a long way to go.
I will take special email and then we'll conclude.
You haven't answered Mr. Minister, you haven't answered my question. As a chairman of the OIC, what kind of impediments and practical problems you see and experience that OIC has not been able to achieve, clearing the misperception about Islam and women in Islam?
Well, as far as the misperception about women in Islam, or as far as the issue of Islamophobia, of course there's a lot of work that's yet to be done. But both events held for the first time here at the United Nations. The marking of International Women's Day from the OIC platform, and the high-level event held in the General Assembly today, along with the President of the General Assembly, with the OIC, to combat Islamophobia, are just two examples of our efforts to this end. But of course, we have to continue these efforts to see results on the ground.
Mr. Foreign Minister, just one quick question.
I have to go to the UN Secretary General.
Just one quick question. On the economic front, anything you have to need to say
on
the economic front?
As far as the economy...
Are you meeting someone here, sir?
As far as the economy is concerned, absolutely, Pakistan is facing incredibly difficult economic times. There's harsh economic realities across the world. We're facing the brunt of them because we have the economic impact of the COVID pandemic that we're still feeling and facing in the form of inflation. We have the economic impact of the fall of Kabul. The economic activity in an economically functioning state to our border over a year ago collapsed, and we've seen the nosedive of their economy, which has the impact in the region. We've also seen the economic output of the impact of the war in Ukraine that has had an outsized impact on developing countries, including Pakistan, in the form of energy insecurity, food insecurity, and skyrocketing inflation. To top it all off, we faced last year the catastrophic climate catastrophe in the form of the floods, took 10% out of our GDP, washed away 5 million acres of standing crop. People are still to 2 million houses. People to this day are facing the consequences of this natural calamity, and we will have to deal with the economic and other consequences of this for times to come. We also have seen, as I've mentioned, over the past year, a steady uptick in terrorist activity, but more recently significant terrorist attacks in Peshawar and in Karachi. Of course, that too has an economic impact. And finally, the cherry on the cake is our negotiations with the IMF are as ever ongoing and still not concluded. And that uncertainty also has economic consequences. So Pakistan is facing a perfect storm of crises. The economic situation is nothing short of a disaster, particularly for the bottom of the pyramid. The weakest, the poorest in Pakistani society, those affected by the flooding, are facing the burden of this more than anybody else, which is why we insist and we request from international financial institutions to cooperate with Pakistan appropriately so that we could provide the necessary relief to our people. Thank you. I don't want to...
If you have final remarks for the Urdu audience, just a quick...
Sorry, मैं आप सबका बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ. आज पाकिस्तान ने अपने कैपेसिटी में as chair of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the OIC हमने 2 तारीखी events host किए हैं यहाँ अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा में. 2 दिन पहले इंटरनेशनल वुमेन्स डे पे ہم نے عورتوں اور اسلام کے نام پہ OIC کے پلیٹ فارم پہ یہاں یونائٹڈ نیشنز میں ایک ایونٹ رکھا تھا جس میں پورا دنیا نے اپنا نمائندگی اور پوائنٹ آف ویو سامنے لے کر آیا، اور اس ایونٹ کا مقصد یہ تھا کہ دنیا میں جو اسلام کے بارے میں غلط فہمی ہے، جو عورتوں کے حقوق کے بارے میں اور اسلام کے کانٹیکس میں عورتوں کے حقوق کے بارے میں جو غلط فہمی ہے، اس کو دور کرنے کی ایک کوشش تھا۔ الحمدللہ بہت کامیاب کیا۔ ہم نے دنیا کو ایک منہ توڑ جواب دیا کہ اسلام وہ مذہب ہے جو عورتوں کو سب سے پہلے حقوق دیے ہیں، اسلام وہ مذہب ہے جنہوں نے پہلے مسلم دنیا کو خاتون وزیر اعظم دیا، پاکستان میں، ترکیہ میں، بنگلہ دیش میں، جگہ جگہ، اور جہاں ہمارے مسائل ہیں وہاں ہمارا کامیابیاں ہے، اور ہم سمجھتے ہیں کہ اسلام کے نتیجے میں عورتوں کو یہ حقوق ملے ہیں۔ ساتھ ساتھ OIC کے پلیٹ فارم سے جہاں یہ ایک بڑا کامیابی تو تھا کہ پچھلے سال ہم نے 15 مارچ کے لیے جو ریزولوشن پاس کروایا، لیکن اگر صرف ہم نے ریزولوشن پاس کروانا تھا اور بھول جانا تھا تو وہ اس کا امپیکٹ نہیں ہوتا۔ آج جو ہوا کہ جنرل اسمبلی کا، یونائٹڈ نیشنز کا، اقوام متحدہ کے جنرل اسمبلی کا ہال میں آپ کا وزیر خارجہ بطور OIC کا کاؤنسل آف فارن منسٹرز نے کو کنوین کیا، پریزیڈنٹ آف دا جنرل اسمبلی ایک طرف اور یونائٹڈ نیشن سیکرٹری جنرل دوسری طرف، اور پوری دنیا کو سامنے بٹھا دیا اور ان کے ساتھ اسلاموفوبیا کا دن منایا اور پوری دنیا سے کلوا دیا کہ اسلاموفوبیا غلط ہے، مسلمانوں کے خلاف جو زیادتیاں ہو رہے ہیں ان سے اس کا مزاحمت کروایا کہ اگر ہمارا قرآن پاک پہ، اگر ہمارا عبادت گاہوں پہ حملے ہوں گے تو اس کا بھی مزاحمت کروایا۔ اور میں سمجھتا ہوں آج ہم نے ایک تاریخی روایت شروع کیا اس پریسیڈنٹ کے بعد، انشاءاللہ تعالی آگے جا کے پاکستان کے پاس تو OIC کا یہ پلیٹ فارم نہیں ہوگا، لیکن آگے جا کے انشاءاللہ تعالی ہر سال یہاں اسی اقوام متحدہ میں OIC اور یونائٹڈ نیشنز اسلاموفوبیا دن منائیں گے، اور آہستہ آہستہ جو ظلم اور ناانصافی مسلم دنیا میں اور غیر مسلم دنیا میں جہاں مسلمان رہتے ہیں ان کے ساتھ ہو رہے ہیں ان کا ہم مقابلہ کریں گے۔ I'm very grateful. I'm sorry I have to run to the SG.
سرف ایکسل کا نیا الگ انداز، یہ ضدی داغ نکالے پر ان کے سافٹ پرلز رکھے کپڑے نرم و ملائم۔
سافٹ
سرف ایکسل، داغوں پر سخت، کپڑوں پر نرم۔
انٹروڈیوسنگ چاکلیٹ چپس اور ویلویٹی چاکلیٹ کا فیوریٹ کومبو، والز کریمی ڈیلائٹ، ناؤ ان چاکلیٹ چپ۔
اب سفر ہوگا محفوظ اور آسان۔ شہید محترمہ بے نظیر بھٹو کے نظریے کے مطابق خواتین کو بااختیار بنانے کا عزم لیے حکومت سندھ نے پاکستان کی تاریخ میں پہلی بار خواتین کے لیے مخصوص پنک پیپلز بس سروس کے کراچی اور حیدرآباد میں آغاز کے بعد پنک پیپلز بس سروس کے مزید 2 نئے روٹس کا کراچی میں افتتاح کر دیا گیا ہے۔
پہلی پنک بس صرف خواتین کے لیے، میری دعا ہے that this is very successful and congratulations in government.
پنک بس